Hey guys, Ben here and welcome back to another video on The Flash. Today we're going to be talking about what would have happened in Season 10. Eric Wallace, the showrunner of The Flash, has revealed everything that he couldn't fit into the final season. So if you do go on to enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment, and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future DCTV videos later this year. Okay guys, so currently I am away. I'm actually in America, so I'm going to be able to watch Superman and Lois at a normal time. So later tonight, I'm going to have my Superman and Lois review out right after the episode ends. But as you all know, The Flash has ended. The final season has finished. We got episode 13 last week, and I have a bunch of other videos that I need to do because they've released like a bunch of articles, and basically I've just been too busy to get around to it. If you missed my Flash ending explainer for the series finale, go check that out. That's on the top right corner of the screen. That's my previous video before this. But let's get into today's main topic. So the title of the EW article, which is linked in the description below, is "The Flash showrunner reveals everything he couldn't fit into the final season." So it goes from one last epic crossover event to multiple returning characters. Executive producer Eric Wallace details all the ideas that were left on the cutting room floor. So this is how the article begins. The Flash brought back its biggest villains in the series finale before Barry and Iris got their happily ever after at the end of the chaotic, jam-packed 4-part series finale. But it turns out there was even more drama, action and twists that showrunner Eric Wallace couldn't fit into the shortened final season, and he's ready to spill all the details, which he does. So when speaking to EW in their latest cover story, Eric Wallace revealed everything he wanted to include, which we're about to get into, before The Flash ended for good, but ultimately a lot of it had to be cut. He says, "I knew ahead of time that story I wanted to tell, and we're actually telling the story that I wanted to tell in the 200th episode had we gotten there. Sadly, we did not. I originally had a 2-year plan involving seasons 9 and 10, but the second half of what would have been the 200th episode was just too good, so I dragged it and pulled it all the way into the series finale, then put some new stuff on top of it to create a new story." So I believe what Eric Wallace is talking about here is all the stuff that went down in the series finale, including, seeing all of these villains returning. I believe it could have been a bigger thing if they had more time, and I've said this in multiple videos since the finale aired, that I feel like we needed a 2-part finale, especially because a lot of those villains felt like they were a bit shafted and they were nerfed in terms of their powers because our heroes were really easily able to defeat them. So I'm pretty sure this is what Eric is talking about. Like, if there would have been 200 episodes, there would have been 10 seasons, they could have done a lot more with that. And maybe Cobalt Blue was meant for the 10th season, but then they obviously dragged it back into this season just to round out the Flash TV show. And while he's satisfied now with how the Flash ends in episode 184, aka the season 9 finale, which was episode 13, he still can't help but mourn all the ideas that never came to fruition. He said, "What was disappointing is there was a couple of heroes and a couple of villains that we will just never get to see the light of day in the Arrowverse, unfortunately, because we had to put all of our energy into Barry and Iris, and we got to fit 2 years worth of Barry and Iris into one season." So below, Eric Wallace breaks down all the ideas, characters and storylines that he wanted to bring to the Flash in the final season, which would have been season 10 if Eric Wallace got his way. But as we all know, it was Grant that approached Greg Berlanti, approached Eric Wallace saying, "Can season 9 be the last season?" And I think everyone agreed, and so yeah, that's why it ended. But this is what Eric Wallace would have included. So first things first, Chester's mystery enemy. So Wallace points out to an unresolved mystery from season 8 that he wanted to bring back in a bigger way if he had more time. Eric Wallace says, "When I heard that the final season was only 13 episodes, suddenly so many things just went out the window at that point. Like, we had a huge storyline that was going to involve Chester and Allegra. They finally kissed, fallen in love, all that good stuff, but they had their own insane storyline in the middle of season 9 originally, with a villain that we did not get to introduce. Back in season 8, episode 15, Eric Wallace planted the seeds for that villain. There's a computer and a cryptic thing that comes up and someone downloads all of Chester's files. That was us setting up the middle graphic novel for season 9. Sadly, that doesn't get resolved anymore because that whole storyline had to be cut. So we've seen this. That was back in season 8. I remember when that happened. I'm sure most of you guys remember that. In terms of, is it a shame that they had to remove this? I don't think this was a vital story, so I don't really care too much to not have played out the story in its full length. It sounds almost like a filler story for, these other characters that are not Barry and Iris to get some time on screen, and so that would be giving Chester a villain, which I guess would be interesting because Chester's never had a villain specifically against him. And this story would have involved Chester and Allegra, which I'm pretty sure most of us can all agree we're not the biggest fans of them, and I like Chester, but this story definitely wasn't necessary, so I'm not mad that it's gone. Let's talk about the next story that was cut from what would have been season 10, Kyone's origin story. So Danielle Panabaker's original season 1 character, Caitlin Snow, returned by the end of the series finale, after Goddess Kyone took over all of her body for the final season. But Wallace intended to expand Kyone's origin story even further. He says, with Kyone, although it worked out great, I had originally pitched it to Danielle Panabaker as a 2-year story, and suddenly I didn't have 2 years to tell her story, so the whole first half got thrown out. It was supposed to start with who comes out of that crystal coffin, right? We had to change so many things. Where we ended up is equally as shocking and surprising and emotional as we would have gotten to in season 10, but we did lose some of the minutiae that I think would have been very enjoyable for the fanbase and for us writers and directors. So there you have it. That's a Kyone story that has been cut. That is part of her story that was supposed to be like a 2-year story according to Eric Wallace. And I agree, this is a shame because I feel like Kyone wasn't the best character. I feel like there was something missing, and so maybe this something missing would have happened if this was played out for 2 seasons. Obviously, he doesn't go into too much detail about what got thrown out, but apparently this is like half of her story that they intended. And so let me just quickly say, in regards to Eric Wallace coming out and talking about all of this stuff, obviously as Flash fans, we get kind of a little bit annoyed, right? Because we wish we could have seen this, and so yeah, it's a shame that The Flash ended, but it was actually Grant's decision. So I'm wondering why Eric Wallace does this. Why does he come out with all of this stuff that could have happened? I get it that it's for the fans and it's to let us theorize about, the potential future, what could happen beyond The Flash ending, but at the same time I feel like it kind of does a little bit of a disservice to season 9 and the fact that Grant wanted to end the show. I don't think it's a problem that the show ended when it did, and yeah, it's a shame that, Eric Wallace had bigger plans for 2 years for season 9 and 10, but yeah, I don't know, what do you guys think about that? I want to know down in the comments below. Do you think it's somewhat disrespectful to season 9 and to the fact that the show was ending, or do you think it's just him being nice and being okay, this is stuff that we would have done, so here you go fans, let's take this in and think about it? I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I feel like Eric Wallace, he loves doing interviews and he loves, revealing stuff that never happened. We've had this quite a few times in the past. He loves teasing, and so at the same time it gives me weirdly some optimism because he's clearly so involved with The Flash, and you would like to think that maybe down the line, sometime in the next few years, he might pitch a spin-off of The Flash to maybe HBO Max or something, and potentially we could see the continuation of some of this, but obviously that's a bit far-fetched. We aren't presuming that there's going to be a spin-off, although the ending of the show pretty much set up a perfect spin-off with future speedsters. But let's move on to the next deleted scene. So the crossover event that never happened. A long comic book arc that Wallace wanted to adapt into the final epic crossover event was The Blackest Night, a miniseries first published in 2009 involving the Green Lantern Corps. He says, back in season 8, we set up the Blackest Night storyline with Deathstorm. When Deathstorm was defeated and the emotional vibrations went all the way back to the Neververse and another dimension to the Necron, who's right out of the comic books. I wanted to have one final big, huge, epic crossover, getting everybody, if you're on the show or not, back together for that storyline. What that would have allowed me to do is bring back characters that are dead, and that's just because of the Blackest Night storyline, and if you know that storyline, you know what he's talking about. and the fact that many heroes come back from the dead, and so it would have offered a great crossover to see some familiar faces that have been long since gone. And so personally, this is the biggest shame for me. Like, I would have loved to see Blackest Night in the Arrowverse, and I'm sure those of you who know Blackest Night or even know the briefest bit about it would have loved to see it. Like, we all love the crossovers, right, in the Arrowverse. They are amazing, but this would have been an epic crossover to finish off with. At least in Season 9, we got some great episodes like the Oliver episode with him returning in Episode 9, and that great episode in Episode 10. But Eric Wallace goes on to say that he intended to bring on characters from The Flash, Superman, Lois, as well as Titans and Stargirl. The idea was to get them all together to stop Necron and all his Black Lanterns, which I'm sure Jeff Johns would have loved because it's his creation. So there you have it, that is him confirming his plans that he would have involved Superman, Lois, as well as Titans and Stargirl. And why is this a big deal? Well, none of these are actually properly connected. Yeah, Stargirl did connect in Titans recently, so now they are connected, but previously, this wouldn't have been any sort of connection, so it would have been a huge crossover, seeing Superman and Lois, which is very separate from the Arrowverse right now, be alongside the Flash characters as well as Titans and Stargirl. I think most importantly, it would have been awesome to see Superman and the Flash back together again, but also seeing like Dick Grayson fighting alongside the Flash. That would be insane. And so yeah, it would have been great to see the Black Lanterns. Imagine Black Lanterns on the CW. We were hoping to see some sort of lanterns throughout the Arrowverse, but we never actually got to see it. Obviously they teased that John Diggle could potentially be a Green Lantern, but that never came to fruition because he chose his life with his family over that. And that's a story that annoyed a lot of people because everyone wanted to see it. So it's a shame that we didn't get this final crossover, this Blackest Night storyline, because we would have seen some form of lanterns, that being Black Lanterns, of course. And so another massive graphic novel that Eric Wallace wanted to take on was the Forever War. We've heard about this before, just like we heard about Blackest Night before, and he says, that's one of those crazy things that I've been hinting at, which is very tied into the Chronarch. Chronarch was hinted at a couple of times in the past by Abracadabra, and so they've been hinting at it for a long way, even back as early as Season 7, and nothing came to fruition about that. He even says in that episode, the Chronarch is coming and is going to mess up your life, and it has to do with Barry and Iris because Eternity is falling apart and Forever is getting taken away. That would have kicked off Season 10 according to Eric Wallace, with a couple of special guest stars that we would have seen. So there you have it, that would have kicked off Season 10 and Blackest Night would have been the final crossover. So according to what he is saying, we would have had a huge final season for Season 10 if they had more episodes. Let's continue on to the returning fan favorite characters that would have returned for the final season if they got an extra season. He reveals they wanted to bring back, and this is a no-brainer, Jordan Fisher as Barry and Iris' second child, Bart Allen, but he was starring in a Broadway show at the time when they were filming the final season, so that's why he wasn't there. Obviously that's a big shame that he couldn't be in the series finale even for a cameo. Same with Cisco, you know, Carlos Valdez was too busy, he couldn't come up to Vancouver. So we had a couple of those, but in terms of other people from the Flash's past, Eric Wallace had the idea to bring back former Flash stars Tom Felton as Julian Albert and Chantal Van Santen as Patty Spivot, and revealed that they would have become a married crime-fighting duo named Hot Pursuit. He says, how cool would have that been? Yeah, that would have been cool, and Hot Pursuit is a big thing in the comics, and people were theorizing for a long time if Patty would eventually become Hot Pursuit, and so obviously he would have involved Tom Felton in this. We haven't seen Tom Felton in The Flash since Season 3 when he left after, you know, Julian Albert's story was over. So they were two big fan favorite characters that I think a lot of us would have liked to see, but they weren't as necessary. Like, I feel, as I said before, Bart Allen and Cisco were way more necessary than seeing them, but it would have been great to see a live action Arrowverse Hot Pursuit if that were to have happened. So overall, I am happy with how The Flash Season 9 ended and how the show ended as a whole. It's a shame that we didn't get a Season 10 and we didn't get these storylines, but there is always hope for the future for a potential spin-off, so let's keep our fingers crossed. But for now, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment, and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. Remember, we are uploading daily right now, so go check out all my latest videos. Flash videos aren't going to be going anywhere. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff in the next couple of weeks, and if you have any video requests to do with the Flash, let me know down in the comments below. But for now, you can click on the top right corner of the screen to watch my latest video, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.
I see